Recently, we have had the great privilege of going with Chris Young, who is with the National Park Service, on a history tour here across the area. The history is of the battles for Chattanooga. And so this morning is part 3 of the installment, and we are up on the top of Missionary Ridge, a place I have never been before to this particular location. So thanks for the invite back.
Yeah.
First of all, did I get it right? Is it the battles for Chattanooga?
It is.
I said it the right way.
It is. Yes. Well, I mean, technically, that's the way we refer to it. If you
Yeah.
look at the tablets, some of those tablets will say the battles of Chattanooga or the Battle of Chattanooga, but since it's multiple days, we just put 4 in there. So you got it perfect.
Okay, so you're playing the role of professor for us again this morning. Let me see if I've gotten my history lesson straight so far. So our last time talking to you, we were at Orchard Knob, which would have been the first of the battles.
Yes.
And it was at the top of Orchard Knob that Ulysses S. Grant stood and watched as they approached from Fort Wood to take the knob.
Okay.
Is that right? Do I have that right?
So almost.
Okay.
So the Battle of Orchard Knob is on the 23rd of November. The Union Army comes out of Fort Wood, attacks Orchard Knob, and then they take Orchard Knob. Then the next day we have the Battle of Lookout Mountain, the Battle Above the Clouds. And then on the 25th of November, General Grant is on the knob.
Okay.
So you almost had it.
Okay.
The Union Army has to take it first, and then Grant gets there, and that's when he watches the Battle of Missionary Ridge.
Okay, so now here we are on top of Missionary Ridge on kind of a fateful November day because it is cold.
Mm-hmm.
Yet you told us that the day that the attack took place on November 25th, 1863, it was far colder.
It was. I mean, it was in the low 30s. I think it's in the 40s now, low 40s. It was around freezing that day. So thankfully the sun was out. The day before, on November 24th at Lookout Mountain, we get the famous Battle Above the Clouds. And it's drizzly, it's misty, a cold front has pushed through and dropped the temperature. And so the morning of November 25th dawns and the sun comes out, but that doesn't mean that it's warm. I mean, it's sunny out here right now, but it's still pretty chilly.
Yeah.
But at least it's not freezing. So think about 32, 33 degrees that morning.
And the rain that had come in the night before, because you were telling us, I'm going to let you tell the story, but weather conditions play a big factor, and that was the case that day.
And that's something we don't tend to think about. Again, weather patterns during the Civil War, we don't think about that when battles are being fought. Mm-hmm. We like to visit places when it's nice and sunny and warm, but we often don't like to mimic those conditions. So to be here today is kind of what they're experiencing in 1863, but we're not running up the side of the ridge. And when we think about that fighting, the ground is still saturated. It's still muddy. There is leaf litter on the ground. So when you're charging up the side of the ridge or you're trying to fend off an attack on a place like Missionary Ridge, you have to think about what's the ground like. You know, it's kind of hard today, but it was slippery, and soldiers don't have treads on their shoes. So they're slipping and sliding and grabbing onto whatever they can to try to get up the side of Missionary Ridge.
And so the battle has a nickname. What is it called?
Well, oftentimes it's referred to the miracle at Missionary Ridge. And it's for that sheer reason of those soldiers clamoring up the side of the ridge that they didn't think that this place could be taken. The Union soldiers nor the Confederate soldiers. They thought it was a done deal.
It is so interesting to me when I talk to you because I've lived in Chattanooga now for 25 years. I've never really known the full story of the battle. And I think I tend to, like most people probably, think about my 10th grade history class and the battles we learned about. Gettysburg, Antietam, Atlanta even. But this battle, even this one here on Missionary Ridge, was totally key in the turning of the war.
And I tell people that even with all of the battles that we have around Chattanooga, we have the Battle of Chickamauga, which is the second deadliest of the entire Civil War behind Gettysburg. We have the most famous, probably, the Battle of Lookout Mountain, the Battle Above the Clouds. But in all of the fighting and bloodshed over Chattanooga, this is probably the most important battle of any of those that we've had, because this is what seals the fate for Chattanooga. The Confederates have tried to starve the Union Army out in the city, and it's with that attack, that miracle of taking Missionary Ridge, that the Confederates are pushed off and they never get the chance to retake and reoccupy Chattanooga. And it's from there that General Sherman sets himself up to march into Georgia in 1864.
Okay, so Sherman, of course, well known on the Union side. Where we are this morning is what you call the Bragg Reservation. Is that right?
Yeah, and a reservation is just a parcel of land that's protected or preserved. It's reserved. Yeah.
So Braxton Bragg, of course, a Confederate.
Yes, the Confederate general over the whole army. This is near where his headquarters was during the battle.
Okay, you mentioned the attack. This one floored me when you told me this. So just within eyesight of me across the road is what looks to be a fairly small marker with high significance.
Yep.
Tell
So the
story.
marker is only about thigh high, and on the front of it, and it's kind of difficult to see because of the weathering, but it says 24th Wisconsin. And a lot of times when we think about battlefields, we may think about those veterans who come back gray bearded, older, or even during the Civil War. We think of soldiers in their 20s, mid 20s, early 20s, but we often don't think about the younger soldiers that are here. And right where the 24th Wisconsin is, not far from us, is where a young 18-year-old lieutenant, after the color bearer, who's carrying the national colors, the U.S. flag of the 24th Wisconsin, gets winded. Think about charging up the side of this ridge, and he collapses, and this young 18-year-old takes the flag, and as he's going up the side of Missionary Ridge, begins yelling, "On Wisconsin," up the side, trying to rally his men to follow him up the side of the ridge. He plants the flag up here, and with those rallied men, will begin helping break the Confederate line, the backbone of the line up here on Missionary Ridge. And for that bravery, he will be one of the 17 Medal of Honor recipients on Missionary Ridge.
But now tell his name.
The irony is that his name is Lieutenant Arthur MacArthur, and his son will also be famous and will receive the Medal of Honor. General Douglas MacArthur during World War II takes the surrender of the Japanese on the Missouri. And so even if you visit here in Chattanooga, the Charles Coolidge Medal of Honor Heritage Center, one of the central pieces to one of the exhibits there is a mannequin of Lieutenant Arthur MacArthur charging up the side of Missionary Ridge, yelling "On Wisconsin." 18.
You know, I would encourage you to come up here anytime, but to be up here on this winter's day is all the more appropriate, I think. Now, we have not talked about the monument here. It is stunning. This is to Illinois. You were telling me that as all these different state monuments were put up, the citizens of the individual states would have funded it.
Mm-hmm. So either the state legislatures would give money, the veterans organizations would fund it, or they might kind of crowdsource and take money that way. So most of the monuments are going to be around the turn of the century, and they would have been brought here and pieced together. So this monument, when it was placed here, would not have come as you see it today, but it would have been constructed essentially here on site. So all of the work would have been done previously and then shipped here by rail and then hauled up here to the top of Missionary Ridge and reconstructed on top of the ridge.
Okay, I'm being rude to you as you talk to me, but there are markers here to the different brigades, I guess. And I notice it says November 25, 1863, 5 p.m. Why 5 p.m.?
So these Illinois markers are just what they are. They're marking positions. So they're different. So their terminology is a little different. This is a monument to Illinois. These smaller, what some people would consider monuments, we call them markers because it's marking these specific units. So we see the 42nd Illinois, the 27th Illinois. They would have marked the positions of where those units would have crested the ridge at 5 p.m.
time. Okay.
So
it is that precise.
Yes. So the general monument is to all the Illinois troops. These markers are marking where these specific troops were at a given time on that given date.
Okay. Let me ask you two questions because we are going to have to get inside because it's getting cold.
Yeah.
Do y'all do tours? Does the National Park Service take people on tours to all of the battlefields?
We do from time to time. I actually conducted this past Saturday a driving tour of the ridge. So we spent 2 hours together driving from Rossville Gap making a stop there, making a stop here, and making a stop at the Sherman Reservation on the ridge. And so from time to time, we do conduct tours so that you can get more familiar with those specific areas.
It is okay. And then my other question was going to be, it's gift giving season. If you wanted to give somebody a book, do you have a recommendation of one? That's putting you really on the spot.
My goodness. There are several that um, are focused on the battles for Chattanooga. What I would say are probably the two right now that are out there are Pete Cousins, Shipwreck of Their Hopes by Pete Cousins, and Mountains Touched with Fire by Wiley Sword.
Okay.
They're a little dated, but they are the only books out there really that encompass from beginning to end the battles for Chattanooga. So Shipwreck of Their Hopes and Mountains Touched with Fire.
It is fascinating. Perhaps read the book and then come up here,
Yeah.
or vice versa. But you will be really inspired, I think, when you're up here. The view is just stunning. And to realize that you're standing on the spot where, as you pointed out, the battle really turned, the
It
war
does.
turned right here.
This one Texas soldier, as he's leaving Missionary Ridge and basically running for his life, says that he turns around and says that Missionary Ridge was the death knell of the Confederacy. This is the beginning of the end. So when you think about Gettysburg and you think about Vicksburg and all of these turning points of the war, we often don't think Missionary Ridge. It's not at the forefront. But for that soldier, he says that this was the death knell. This is the beginning of the end.
Well, it is not the end of our conversations with you. I know we're just beginning. So thank you so much for taking time on a very cold day. You can learn more, I guess, if you want to go to.
Well, you can go to our website, www.nps.gov/CHCH, and our calendar of events is there. So you can search our calendar. You can follow us on social media, and we put programming up on social media and on our website calendar for you
Your
to be able to
treasure.
follow.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see you soon.